Hi, I'm Lori Neverman from Common Sense Homesteading, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference between freeze drying and dehydrating. And we're going to start here in the kitchen with the dehydrators, and then I'll go out in the garage and we'll look at the freeze dryer. So with a home dehydrator, you can build really simple units yourself with things like just racks out in the sun or solar powered things, or something with light bulbs. There's all kinds of different options, but the commercial dehydrating units, like the Excalibur dehydrator and the Nesco Snackmaster, you have heat and airflow. Now, the Snackmaster has the airflow and heater at the top, and then it directs airflow down through the unit. The Excalibur dehydrator has the heat and airflow directed from the back. There's a fan, there's a heater, and you adjust the temperature up here. Now, food drying time is typically anywhere from a few hours to over a day, depending on what you're drying. I typically will load things up in the evening, like right before I go to bed, and then let them dry overnight. And for a lot of things, that works pretty well. And it's a very simple machine. I have had both of these units for a number of years. They work just fine. There's no moving parts except the fan blade itself. So they're pretty basic. You have box, trays, airflow, heat, and that's it. Okay, so next we're going to talk about, we're going to go out in the garage and we're going to talk about the freeze dryer. Okay, now we're going to take a look at the freeze dryer unit. Now the freeze dryer, you can see, is quite a bit larger. It's about, the main unit is about the size of a dormitory fridge, and then it has the pump that sits behind it. So the freeze dryer, unlike the dehydrator, is a significantly more complex. Within the freeze drying unit itself, there's a chiller that will take this temperature down to minus 30 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. Within the unit also, this is the freeze drying chamber. You can see there's an insulating pad here. And then this chamber gets tightly sealed against this rubber gasket, and there's a drain hose that gets closed off. This chamber has to pull a complete vacuum. It has to absolutely maintain a vacuum, no air, otherwise the freeze drying process doesn't work. If you compare that to the dehydrators, they're open to the air. It's just a box with airflow and heat. So again, significantly more complex than a dehydrator. And then we have an insulating pad that goes over that. Now within this unit, each individual tray has the heaters here to adjust the temperature to the tray. There's also electronic controls because it runs it through to make sure to take it down to the 30 below 0 temperature. And then once it goes through its, you can do custom settings. It has a start, which is a default setting where it just uses its own sensors to determine the runtime. Or you can also customize the setting. Again, it's a significantly more complex controller. So I'll close that up. And we look over here. I'm going to have my son pan over. Now this is the vacuum pump. Then this is a very high powered pump. It has to be able to take that chamber down so that the pressure is down to vacuum. There's no air inside of there. I mean, the pump itself is not an inexpensive unit. And then it has to tie in and be controlled by the controls in the freeze dryer unit. So you can see there's a lot more going on here with the freeze dryer, the home freeze dryer, than there is with a dehydrator. Okay, so next we're going to take a look at what the actual finished product looks like from a dehydrator versus a freeze dryer. Now with a dehydrator, most people are familiar with something like jerky, where you've got the chewy meat product, or fruit leather, where it's stretchy, leathery, that kind of texture. Now a dehydrated strawberry, I have these vacuum sealed in a container. Again, it's a hard little chip. They're flat. They're like little strawberry poker chips. They're going to be leathery in texture. They're not bad. They're very good. and I will use them in baking, things like that, but they don't really look all that much strawberry-ish anymore after they've been dehydrated. They shrink up, they deform, the color tends to darken because of the heat. Now, if we compare that to freeze-dried strawberry, now these are also vacuum sealed. I'm gonna pop that top off here. Now, if we look at the texture of the freeze-dried strawberry, I'll pour out a couple of these, you can see that they have a lot better color. They look more like a strawberry in the finished product. Here's one, it's decided. The freeze drying process just keeps the food looking more like it originally did. If we go to break one of these in half, it's light and crisp, it's airy, it has more of a powdery texture than a leathery texture. The taste on these things is amazing. I mean, they're both good, but I have to say, personally, I like the freeze-dried texture and taste just a little bit better. I'm gonna finish this one because I can't stick it back in the jar, right? No double dipping. So, I'm gonna grab a couple rings here. You do not want to leave the freeze-dried stuff open to the air, because if there's moisture in the house, it will act like a sponge. And because of that, I have moved to, I'm going to grab one of these quick, Mylar packaging for the freeze drying, because this is just a little bit more of a guarantee. I have a sealer, I seal the tops on these, it's an iron type sealer, and put an oxygen absorber in that, and that will give the fruit a shelf life of probably close to 20-25 years. Generally speaking, from what I've seen shelf life wise, with dehydrated foods, depending on conditions, maybe 5 to 10 years max. I do try to rotate my dehydrated products and use them up within 1 to 3 years, personally, for my taste, for what I've seen in storage. I have seen longer claims, but I try to rotate in 1 to 3 years. Whereas I do trust properly sealed freeze-dried materials for a significantly longer time period. Now, if we look at the meat that was freeze-dried, this was a Sloppy Joe mix. So it was a ground beef, not unlike the ground beef that I started with for the beef jerky, which, okay, there were different seasonings, so it was darker to start out with, but you can see that's flat, leathery looking. Now, the ground beef that I spread in the freeze dryer, I don't know if you can hear that, but it's very light and crisp. I compare these in texture to something like a cheese puff. We jokingly call them Meatos. They are so light and airy and fluffy. It's not really chewy at all. You can hear it just melts in your mouth. And it's strange, different, but it's good. I mean, if you were a paleo person, or just like me, I'd be tempted to eat these as snacks, but of course you better watch that out, because it'd be way too easy to eat snack too much and eat way more meat than you intended. They're very light, they're very airy. The texture is just so different between the dehydrated and the freeze-dried foods. Now, if you're rehydrating freeze-dried or dehydrated products, the end result is also a little bit different there. If you're rehydrating dehydrated products, it's going to take a little bit longer. You want to put that meat on and let it slow cook so it has time to absorb that moisture, because of the way that the cellular structure is changed from dehydrating versus freeze drying. Dehydrated foods will take a little bit longer to rehydrate. Freeze-dried foods, probably you should be able to rehydrate and have a hot meal within 5 to 10 minutes. It's just add water and go. Whereas the dehydrated products, you're going to need a little bit longer to cook that and let that reabsorb water. It's a very different structure to the end product. And once you taste it, if you can compare, if you don't have access to your own freeze dryer, but you can find typically freeze-dried fruits in a lot of cereal mixes, something like that, like the cereal mixes that are with berries. Those berries are typically freeze-dried, not dehydrated. They'll be light, they melt in your mouth. and you know, the dehydrated berries and other vegetables, it's all leathery, it's shrunken, it's tough, it's chewy. So that's just a kind of a different thing. Again, both useful, both good food, just a little bit different end result. So I do have a post on the site that is in cooperation with this video. If you want to check that out at the URL at the end of the video, I invite you to take a look. And thanks so much for watching.